Good evening, good people. It's me. It's your good Dr. Nick, Dr. Nicole Alford, clinical psychologist extraordinaire right here in the DMV. I'm so delighted that you've decided to join me. This is my very first YouTube post that I'm making to my brand new YouTube channel. So thank you for joining me. What I want to talk about tonight is freedom. The fact that it is Independence Day upon us and one more day has really spurred me to think about freedom and independence and what it means to really be free. That coupled with the fact that just 2 days ago on the 1st of July I turned 50, seminal moment for me, life-changing, mind-altering experience for me. And so I want us to have a conversation about that. I've got my wine. I hope you have yours too, because this could get a little deep. I want to talk to you a little bit about what 50 means to me. And the first thing that I'll let you know is I did a blog, which really very in great detail explains this. You can find that blog. It's entitled What 50 Means to Me at www.drnick.me. And I invite you to read that blog. But really, I just wanted to sort of do this YouTube, put it out there and talk about my experience, because for me, it really was an experience. It was a journey. And for many people, it was a journey. And the first thing I'll say is this. I remember growing up, obviously I'm 50, I'm a proud Gen Xer, and so I grew up and came of age really in the 80s, right? That was sort of like the decade of excess. You know, Wall Street and limousines and money, and for those people that had money to do it and that were inclined to do so, cocaine. That was just sort of that age, and so I came of age during that time. And one of the things that I remember is that was the time that when people turned 50, they sort of did one of two things. They lost their minds and had great difficulty grappling with the fact that they were 50. And so at that point in time, sort of the meta message to 50, to those two numbers strung together, was old, used up, not useful, behind the times, we don't need you anymore. And that's what 50 really meant to people. And so they internalized that. They took 50 on as a label and they internalized it as a really very negative piece of who they were and their identity. They saw that they were over the hill, and you might remember that term. People use that all the time. They still use it now. They were over the hill. When you get to a hill, right, you're at the top, but when you're over it, that means you're on the downslope. And that means that, you know, sort of your better days are behind you. And that sort of was what people did. They went out, they bought shiny new red cars, the men did. They went out, a lot of them had affairs, had full-blown midlife crises. The women might have gone out and bought themselves some new breasts, or, you know, a new body, got some liposuction, got some work done to their faces. And people really began to change how they looked, because in their minds, if I look young, then that means I am young. If I can trick the world into thinking I'm not 50, then I'm really not 50. Fast forward to 2019, July 1st, and fast forward to Dr. Nick. This has been a journey that I've been on for well over a year. I've been turning 50 now for well over a year. I've been touting 50. I've been calling 50. I've been identifying myself as 50. You know, some of my close friends or people that are in my circle, they would hear me say, I'm 50 years old. I'm 50 years old. I've been coming for 50 for the past year. What it meant for me and what I chose to do was to embrace it. What 50 meant for me, and I approached it in a really very introspectful, reflectful kind of a way. And here's how I choose to look at 50. Life expectancy for a woman in America, an African American woman, is probably around late 70s. I would say 78 to 82, around there, but close to the late 70s, right? Life expectancy. And for men, we know it's and for black men, it's less than that. And so I chose to look at it, and I chose to approach it as, if I were a Vegas gambler, if I were a statistician, if I were a Vegas bookie, and I looked at it in terms of probabilities, statistically, the odds are not in my favor that I'm going to have another 5 decades. They're just not. And so what I did was I took that realization, I accepted it, not as a negative thing. I mean, sure, it makes me sad to know that I might not have another 5 decades because, hey, I've had a wonderful life. I've done some wonderful things and had some wonderful experiences and made some wonderful memories in these 5 decades that I've had. So in a way, it saddens me that I may not have 5 more. But I'll tell you what it does do. It fuels me because I understand that time is not on my side. I understand that every single moment, hour, minute, second counts. And so I am so incredibly intentional about how I spend those moments. And I'm so incredibly intentional about making those moments into memories and living each moment like it is my last. There's a California Angels pitcher whose name I can't call at this second. But at the age of 27, just 2 days ago, he was found dead in his hotel room. His teammates, his fans, baseball players and baseball fans all around the world are grappling with that. Because when death, which is so unpredictable and so fickle, calls and comes for a 27-year-old, it is very sobering. How fickle, how precious, how unpredictable, how fragile life really is. And so for me, 50 means embracing the time that I have left. And so here's what I don't do. Here's what it means that I don't do. It means that I do some things like being intentional about how I spend my time and who I spend my time with. But here's what I don't do. I will no longer be a 3 strikes and you're out kind of chick. I was always that type of person to give grace and to give grace and to give grace. And people would wrong me and people would offend me, or jobs would, or situations and circumstances would, and I give them a second chance and I give them a third chance and fourth chance. I understand that I don't have those chances to give. I understand that time is precious. And for some of us, time is borrowed. And so I'm no longer going to be a 3 strikes and you're out kind of chick. I have just ordained for myself that I'm not going to do that. And that's not going to say that there's no forgiveness. And that's not to say that there's no second chance. What that is to say is that I don't have time to waste. So that's one thing that I'm very intentional about. And it doesn't matter what the circumstance or who the person is. Jobs. I've worked at jobs and for organizations, companies and agencies that have wronged me. And those of you who may be watching and you may be in corporate America or in the federal or state governments, you might be in human resources, you might be a leader, you understand that people don't leave organizations. People leave people. And so organizations and companies set people in those positions, right, to administrate and manage and govern over the people who work there. But I will no longer be a 3 strikes and you're out kind of chick. You'll maybe get 2. If it's egregious enough, 1, and I'm out. And it doesn't really matter what the situation or circumstance is. And that's a decision that I had to live 50 years to come to. That's a decision that I had to make by having remained in a place that made me miserable, where I had physical symptoms or depression, sort of emotional symptoms and illnesses as a result of trying to remain in a place that wasn't meant for me to be in. So that brings me to number 2. The second thing that I will no longer do is I will no longer contort, do mental gymnastics, morph myself for the acceptance of other people. I will no longer do that. I've spent decades of my life trying to act a certain way, trying to look a certain way, trying to wear my hair a certain way, because certainly, I entered the workforce at a time where we didn't necessarily have Supreme Court decisions that protected women and their hairstyles, and that said that women could wear their hair any way that they darn well pleased. I didn't enter the workforce in that era. I will no longer physically contort myself to be something that I'm not. If I'm in a place, if I'm working for a company, if I'm in a relationship that is not working for me, where I can't be my authentic self, where I'm not free to be who I am, to say how I feel, if I have to hold my tongue, if I have to bite my tongue until it bleeds, some of you know what I'm talking about. I will no longer do that. That's what 50 does for you. It just really sort of opens your mind to the prospect of your own mortality in a way that when you're younger, you don't have that recognition. Number 3, the other thing that turning 50 did for me, and probably the most important thing that it did for me, and something that I've already said here before, or I've alluded to it, is simply the concept of time. I look at time differently. I look at people, I look at situations, I look at jobs, I look at everything I do in terms of time. And that time is money. That's how I look at it. My time is valuable. It is invaluable because time is like a dollar. Once it's spent, you can't get it back. And so 50 has given me new liberty, a new freedom, a new independence to go forth and to go onwards and to move forward with this sort of newfound philosophy on life. That's what 50 did to me. And again, I embraced it. I did a countdown. On my personal Facebook page, I counted down at T-minus 21. So 21 days on to D-Day, right? To the day that I turned 50, I counted down. And I'm very proud to be 50. I feel like coming from where I come from, I'm from the urban ghettos of Brooklyn, New York. There are not many ghettos left in Brooklyn, New York, but when I grew up, much of Brooklyn was urban and inner city and poor, very poor. And so from where I grew up and when I grew up and the circumstances, the contextual environment that I grew up in and the circumstances that I grew up in, I'm super proud to be 50, to be where I are, to be where I am, to stand in who I am and to have that knowledge. I'm so incredibly proud. So I just wanted to share that with you because it was important to me. It was an experience that I had. I felt that a lot of people maybe have had a similar experience, or maybe they haven't, or maybe they're grappling with getting older and turning 50 and really what that means to them. And I'm okay with it. And I want to tell you and help you to be okay with it. 50 is the new 30. That was a hashtag that I created. 50 is the new 30. 50 doesn't have to be the end. And 50 doesn't have to be over the hill. And if it is over the hill, if you've gotten over a hill, if your first 50 years was a hill, then there are other hills left to climb. I've got a whole lot more living to do. I've got a whole lot more contribution to do. And most importantly, I have a lot of wisdom. And I won't make the same mistakes that I made in my youth, right? So there's a saying that youth is wasted on the young. And I never really knew or understood sort of what that meant until I turned 50. So thank you for listening. I want you to tune in next week. We'll have a brand new post. But in the interim, I want you to do your own reflection and introspection about your life, about how you're living it, about your beliefs about aging and getting old. Take care and be well.